Hello everyone, and welcome back to some more Ji Senjo no Mao with me, Phantom Zwei. So, hopefully I'm less likely to stutter my way through the rest of this narration. Hopefully it's also not another 45 minutes of me narrating straight, but I guess we'll see, right? So, let's get back into it, with Kyohei's past. At any rate, mercenaries aren't trained to become charity workers. If a cadet fails to graduate from the academy and get on the market after 2 to 5 weeks, he won't make it in the industry. At my graduation, the devil proposed a certain codename to me. His own, the devil, in my native tongue, Mao. However, not a single mercenary or assassin in the world would use such a joke of an alias. Only when I was among companions, or when an operation did not require the use of a codename, did I go by the name Mao. When I did so, I thought back to my old instructor. Granted, that was only because by the time I made it to my first battle, the devil had already passed away. They say a new recruit's reaction to his first kill can vary from person to person, but I was so composed at the time that it surprised even my unit commander. I sent an ambush for the enemy by taking aim from a hiding place in the tall grass, just as I had practiced in training. All I did was pump lead into whatever moved. I don't see any reason to be deeply moved over something like that. I could hear the murmurs of the devil inside me, breathing into Samijima Kyohei's ears. These are not remains, but a body. It is not the dead, but an object. Those whispers protected me from guilt, regret, and escapism. After the battle, an American that had been put on point was crying and muttering to himself. "I'm not a killer. I'm not a murderer. Murderers are people that go after those weaker than themselves. I can't be a murderer." Being placed at the front was a form of consideration meant to ensure that he didn't fire upon an ally in derangement. When we began to relocate for our next campaign, he suddenly turned around and pointed his gun at an ally. At that exact moment, as if he was expecting it to happen, the commander shot him dead on the spot. I too had my gun at the ready. The lesson I had learned that day? Making excuses for your actions will only get you killed. I roamed the battlefields as a mercenary for about 2 years. My jobs lasted anywhere from 2 weeks to 5 months. I worked as a guard for a diamond mine, participated in the annihilation of a group of fascist guerrillas, and even participated in the front lines of a feint operation as a member of the army for a country that did not have its own special forces. I could have sworn that I was a goner on that particular job. I got separated from my guide in the middle of the jungle, but I was fortunate enough to stumble upon and secure a safe water source and make it out alive. 2 years later, I reunited with Alan. Looks like I was right about you. You did well to make it this far. The relationship between a mercenary and his contractor was like the relationship between a prostitute and the Yakuza drug dealer she buys from. In other words, you're trapped in a hell where no matter how much you work, you'll never make a profit. In fact, some of my fellow comrades had been sent to a military school by their contractors, even after their contracts had expired, in order to provide them with further training. The amount of money that you could get as a novice mercenary was no better than the salary you would earn working in a convenience store in Japan. But even so, it was enough money to allow people who came from warring third world countries to feed their family for years. It's not like you got into this business for the money, is it, Kyohei? That goes without saying. Money was necessary, of course, but in order to put my plan for revenge into action, I would first need some connections. That's right, revenge. Ending dozens of human lives with no reason in particular had changed my way of thinking. So my dad had killed Usami and 3 other people. What of it? They were all vermin. They weren't local militia fighting for freedom. They weren't child soldiers from the Middle East who had been taught nothing but how to kill from the very moment they were born. In fact, in my eyes, They were rare examples of people who were killed for a reason. Even if you were to kill a civilian, you would not be court-martialed as long as your side won. And as I saw more and more of these travesties, I came to find the fact that my father was going to trial at all to be absurd. As a child, I had talked about wanting to save my father. Now, I found myself driven by the impulse to destroy everything that Japan stood for. You're a free agent now, Kyohei. I hope you don't mind me trying to recruit you again, but as a full-blown merc this time. I told him that I'd had enough of going into armed conflicts with blazing guns. To be honest, I just wasn't cut out for combat. My main downfall would be my tall build. A bigger body makes for a bigger target. In fact, most of the soldiers you see bragging about their prowess are the ones of normal height and build, people that wouldn't stand out at a glance. Occasionally, you'll see one of those big muscled gorillas like they show in the movies, but most of those either meet a quick death or go mad and become useless. To exasperate the problem, I apparently had a disrespectful habit of treating the whole process as some sort of fearless game. I never actually intended it to be that way, but people had pointed it out to me on several occasions that I intentionally avoided striking vital areas. On the battlefield, where a split-second judgment could mean the difference between life and death, this was a fatal flaw. However, I had a certain talent in liaisons due to my language studies. For the second stage of my revenge, I began gathering experience in espionage and intelligence. When someone says mercenary, most people generally have the preconception of a soldier, and I was honestly no different. But as one would expect, the jobs requested by the clients that put forth the best pay are, naturally, quite difficult and highly confidential in nature. They have months, sometimes even years of planning put into them beforehand. Also, unsurprisingly, these jobs come with harsh prerequisites. Prerequisites. One of the reasons Alan wanted to recruit me happened to be because I was Asian. Japanese people are a scarcity among mercenaries. Because of this, I was sometimes given opportunities to pose as someone of Taiwanese, Korean, or Hong Kongese descent. Of course, I posed as an innocent Japanese tourist on occasion as well. This allowed me to get around and do my work freely, without suspicion. I suppose I don't have to go into the importance of information warfare. Needless to say, the pay was on a completely different level compared to when I was an infantryman. But the risk involved justified that. Since mercenary work is not protected under treaties or agreements, I was in danger of becoming just another unidentified corpse at any time, whenever I infiltrated enemy territory with a fake passport. Since a dead man is difficult to track, I quickly earned a reputation as an excellent spy. On one occasion, I was in Moscow placing bids on military-grade explosives. A very interesting story caught my ear. A famous violinist by the name of Mishima Kaoru would be playing a concert at a nearby theater. The officer who told me of this, said that there was going to be a high-ranking Arab official in the audience, and that he had been cooperating with America. Thus, he wanted to kill him. However, my attention was purely on Mishima Kaoru herself. Usami Yoshinori's wife. Great, let's kill him. The decision was no more difficult than deciding what to eat for breakfast. The officer returned a smile. Having built up a decent number of connections, I gathered a group of men that would do anything for money with the help of my mercenary friends. It mostly comprised bodyguards for high rollers and extensive drug cartels and kidnappers for hire. I acted as the team's commander. In an attempt to misdirect the police force, I leaked information beforehand that there was going to be a bombing at the bank across the city. It worked rather well, as the operation went off quite smoothly. I smuggled in the C4 personally. The image of a Japanese tourist, that incredible free pass to whatever event you may desire access to, worked brilliantly. I succeeded in placing the detonator, then waited until Mishima Kaoru's performance to set it off. When I finished off Mishima Kaoru as she lay half dead from the blast, I felt a strange sense of anticlimax, like I had just finished my taxes or something. It was then that I first met her daughter, Usami Haru. She called herself Hiro, probably from insanity induced by fear. People may be right about me when they say that I have an irreverent habit of playing around. The video games I played with Kyosuke always had a righteous story about a hero whose village was burned to the ground. After coming to terms with the loss of his family, the hero would gain power over time, and eventually come to defeat the evil demon lord, that is, Mao. If someone were to ask me why I didn't kill her, I could only answer that it was because it would be more interesting that way. No. To be absolutely honest, the conscience which I was sure I had purged began to ache. A father is a father, and a daughter is a daughter. I remember feeling that way even after killing her innocent mother. My common sense ethics had warned me against slaughtering an innocent child. In the end, as the years passed, I ended up forgetting about Usami Haru. Anyway, I decided to let her off then, especially since I had to worry about escaping the authorities in time. After that, I tried to check up on my father's situation in Japan. His sentence from the first trial was death. My worst fears had become reality. Granted, whether he received life in prison or a mere 5 years, I still intended on putting my plan into action. One moment, need a drink. This narration, man, holy shit. Luckily, Father had apparently taken what I said to heart, as he was in the process of an appeal. But the real kicker, what truly bothered me, was my mother's situation. When I secretly went to see her, I found her in a hospital bed. From what information I could gather, it seemed she had been diagnosed with a mental illness. Furthermore, she had been living alone for quite some time. Alone, I thought. Where had Kyosuke gone off to? When I discovered the answer to that question, I seethed with rage. My little brother, the one I had entrusted my mother to, had been adopted by, of all people, Azai Gonzo, and was devoting himself to the pursuit of pittance profit. I had changed so much that even my mother failed to recognize me. I grew deeper absorbed in my preparations. When one works in the field of espionage long enough, one inevitably meets fellow intelligence workers from the private sector, namely, from trading corporations. And when that corporation is as gargantuan as the Sano Corporation, it would be heard of not to employ a few people with the little task of selling the copious information stumbled upon by the company. I grew close to one such person, and through him, to the CEO. At the time, Sano was experiencing a few problems common to multi-billion-dollar enterprises. Meeting sales quotas in a million-dollar company is simple. One only needs to sell a few Mercedes-Benz or a yacht or two to maintain growth and revenue. A billion-dollar company, though, is something else entirely. It's a near impossibility to hold such incredible capitalistic power without dipping into military affairs. In Sano's defense, they did have a secret factory in Latin America running to supply weapons to third world countries, but in the end, it amounted to a mere fraction of a percent of the arms dealing business as a whole. Thus, I proposed that they used another company under their umbrella to export manufactured weapons out of Japan. Weapon exports are outlawed in Japan, but that is exactly why they would lead to a profit if successful. There are a good number of independent weapons dealers in the world, people that sell out of an attached case. I set them up with Sano, established a few bases along fishing harbors in Japan, and cultivated a market. We set up from harbors in Niigata and Fukui, Then we made deliveries to the sea, over the sea to a North Korean vessel, and skipping words. From there, we formed a land route from Pyongyang to Vladivostok. My gosh. Once in Russia, we sent our goods all the way to Moscow, and at that point, we didn't have to worry about being tracked. Furthermore, while the bribes won't work on customs officials in Japan, classic smuggling tricks like triple walling your shipping containers can sometimes get your exports through. And while spearheading Sano's darkest dealings, Mao was busy with a business plan of his own. I consulted with Alan. You want to start up a mercenary contracting organization in Japan? Alan's eyes sparkled. He no longer treated me as the greenhorn child I once was. He now recognized me as a fully independent adult. I know the Japanese are in high demand. That's why I had my eyes on you. But Japan is a prosperous country. Who do you think is going to apply? I can't imagine there's much profit to be had.
私も裕福な家庭に育った。けれど、物質的な豊かさに関係なく、心の貧しい人間というのはどこの国でもいるものだ。
For example,
未来を担う坊やたちです。
To a Westerner like Alan, the Japanese give off the impression of a very polite, punctual, and communal people, always concerned with what their family and other people think. For example, corporate scandals are publicly apologized for by a representative of the company. In the West, even heinous criminals don't apologize to the bereaved family very often. Some theorize that this is a sort of peer pressure or desire to fit in, it formed a loose standard that functioned as a sort of deterrent against the emergence of violent criminals within Japan. But in recent years, the change in social environment has weakened the sense of unity amongst Japanese, a trend marked by the rise in individualism. Heinous crimes committed by young children who received insufficient love and attention at home, or have been ostracized by their peers in the community, have gradually started to grab people's attention. I spoke to Alan about what I'd read in a certain book, and then informed him of my own original, delightful little proposal. For example, bullying is a problem in every developed nation. Yet, for some reason, child suicide rates in Japan stand out as exceptionally high.
私はひどく悲しいんだ、アラン。これがアメリカだったら、銃を片手にギャングの仲間入りをするという道があったろう。
If we can discover talented individuals and then give them a proper training, you can bet they'll justify our investment when they become capable warriors. This procedure, almost akin to kidnapping, proved to be fairly successful in the West. After all, acting as a mercenary recruiter is a pretty extreme job, and while their numbers have certainly decreased, they're still in operation across many regions in Europe, even to this day. You'll have my full support, Mao. Thusly, I began my roaming through the streets of Japan. My first targets were the children of corporate presidents and bastard children of politicians. The rationale behind this choice was that if their training turned out to be a bust, I would at least be able to use them as hostages for ransom from their parents. I soon began to target lower-ranking members of organized crime rings as well, and then members of biker gangs or the like who would soon be on their way to organized crime. The talent I sought was that of pitiful children who faced unjust treatment within their family, school, or workplace. Children with nowhere to turn but violence. One of my many pleasures was watching these children grow. I loved to see what they did with themselves after learning how to sell cocaine or being given weapons to rob a bank. The information network among children in Japan was not to be underestimated, as rumors about the Mao quickly spread. Eventually, I did not have to go looking for talent. Talent came to me. In all seriousness, though, it should be noted that it's natural for a boy to want to fire a .44 Magnum at least once in his life. A troubled family background isn't necessarily a factor there. Anyway, Among all these children was an exceptional example of talent, Tokita Yuki. My experience with female mercenaries was limited solely to rumors, as a testament to how rare they must be. It was such a shame that Tokita turned out to be an acquaintance of Usami's. Now then. Oh my god, the monologue, is it over? The Supreme Court rejected my father's appeal for clemency just the other day. I made it just in the nick of time. If my father had been killed, my revenge would have no doubt spread beyond this city's borders. I look up at the Sano building, the place my father once worked, and the place I utilized to assist in my arms smuggling. It's finally time to pay the piper, Sano. I'm here to collect my dues from the despicable organization that unjustly covered for Usami Yoshinori and sentenced my father to capital punishment. My only remaining worries are that hero and my traitorous kid brother, Kyosuke. You like playing around, don't you? What a child. I close my eyes, and the image of that old Swiss training center comes to mind as I hear my instructor's voice.
もう坊やではありませんよ、魔王。
So he says. Alright. That was freaking long. But there it is. The next day, I invited Tokita to my apartment. How did Miss Noriko react?
おおむね許してくれるそうよ。ユキ、あまり一人で悩むなよ。
She seemed somehow discontent. Alright, now you can tell me all about Mao.
と言っても、ほとんどわからないのだけれどね。
Tokita started at the beginning, when she first met Mao. The more I heard, the more I understood Mao's true power. So what did Mao want from you in return?
それが全くてっきり父を利用するのだと思っていたのだけれど。
I don't get it. What's he trying to do gathering these children? Mao seems to like playing with people's minds. Where is Mao hiding?
驚かないでほしいけれど、このマンションのすぐ近くよ。もっとも複数ある拠点の一つなのだろうけれど。
Well, we have to start somewhere.
いえ、もうもぬけの殻でした。
Not a single hint?
それどころか、まるで私を嘲笑うかのように、部屋の鍵が開いていました。
Tokita spoke up, as if pondering something.
魔王はよく山王物産のビルに出入りしていたようよ。うん。昨日も何か怪しげだった。
Then, as if she just thought of something, Usami pulled out the notebook she had sketched a portrait in yesterday.
この外人さんなんだが、見たことないか？
Tokita's eyes narrowed.
会ったことあるわ。傭兵だって紹介されたけれど。
A mercenary?
名前は確かアランだったかしら。偽名だと思うけれど。
So that's Alan. What did he talk to you about?
戦場での話を少し。と言っても、とっくに引退しているって言ってたわ。魔王とはかなり深い関係にあるみたいね。
This makes me all the more uneasy. Seeing as he managed to reel you in of all people, Tokita, Mao must be a highly skilled negotiator, correct?
語学は堪能みたいよ。警察のマニュアルにあるような交渉の基本的なスキルは熟知しているみたいね。何より人を騙すことにかけては病的なまでに得意だわ。
What do you mean by that?
本物の社会病室者はね、嘘を嘘だと自覚しないまま話すことができるの。彼は本物ではないと思うけれど、それに近いくらいの凄みがあるわ。魔王は人を手にかけることに何のためらいもない。
I nodded with a disgusted expression. The more I hear, the more I sigh. He's no longer the Kyohei I once knew, the strong, kind older brother who played video games with me. Mao's aim is to free my father, Samijima Toshikatsu.
となると、傭兵を雇って武器も士気も潤沢にある魔王の行動は
脅迫でしょうね。どこぞに爆弾を仕掛けたとか。
Either that, or take hostages and hold himself up in the Sano Corporation headquarters. They both nodded at what I said. I think Mao has a grudge against the Sano Corporation. Dad's trial was completely biased towards Usami for some reason. The backstory, the fact that you could sympathize with what Dad did, was barely touched upon in court, and was never widely reported. It's been rumored that the current director of Sano's senior management, one Mr. Somiya, might have been keeping it covered up. They say that if Usami's evil deeds had been let out of the bag, Somiya would have been arrested too. Let's scout around downtown for now. Usami came with me. You have to babysit Shiratori, right, Tokita? She laughed.
助けてくれてありがとうね、京介くん。
Whatever. Just get that money ready.
また連絡する。水葉と椿によろしく。
We stepped outside. It was terribly cold.
昨日の晩、雪が降ったらしいっすよ。
The winter cold pierces my skin. Looks like it'll snow again today, too. Oh, here's an unexpected caller. Just wanted to remind you that I existed. Yo, you overseas right now? It was Cannon, as carefree as ever. Someone must have called her about it. The wake is today. You don't have to drop everything to come back. Alright then. Call me when you land. Later. I hang up, cutting her off. Cannon didn't seem too shocked. She might be in denial about Gonzo's death. Now that I think about it, I can't help but pity Cannon. A popular figure skater with a Yakuza boss father. Gonzo's threats have kept the scandals surrounding Cannon to a minimum. But from now on, who knows? And just by being Gonzo's daughter, she's almost certainly going to face some discrimination in the future. Usami looked over at me in an attempt to read my mind. Usami, a single member's dark path can lead a whole family to hell. I know that better than anyone.
どうしました？自分のことが好きなんですか？
I had sex with this girl, and consensually at that.
照れますね。見つめないでください。
Aha. This must be the reason I feel so off. Mind coming with me to the city offices?
まさか婚姻届ですか？
In contrast to Usami's fooling around, I wasn't in the mood for jokes. A few hours pass. Sorry for the wait.
まったく何なんすか？嫁をハンバーガーショップに置き去りにして。
They said I needed 2 witnesses, so it took a while.
どういうことか説明してもらえるんでしょうね。
I'm not Azai anymore.
はい？
I just renounced my adoption. I'm no longer Gonzo's foster son. From now on, I'm Samijima Kyosuke.
マジっすか？なんでまた？
I just felt like it. Call it closure, I guess.
しかし、いいんですか？
Yeah. Gonzo's dead and all. There'd be no point in continuing to leech off his name.
自分は
One
これ
moment.
からあなたを何と呼べばいいんですか？
Alrighty, sorry about that. Whatever you want. Why not Kyosuke?
恥ずかしいんですよね、素で言うのは。
Renouncing my adoption does nothing but swap out one government printout for another, but I somehow feel as if a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. Mom is dead, Kyohei became Mao, and Dad. I've done nothing but run away all this time. I should go see Dad.
あ、ちょっと待ってください。これでカノンとも兄弟じゃなくなるんですよね。
What about it?
いえ、ちょっとやきもちを。
You'd be cuter keeping quiet about things like that.
そうっすかね。
Let's just head to the business district. We made our way to the Sano Corporation building. It must be a weekend, as there are abnormal numbers of people out today.
昨日は静かだったんですがね。
Central Boulevard was as lively as usual.
おい、京介。
Yo, it's been a while. Still kicking, eh?
そりゃこっちのセリフだよ。事情はユキ様から聞いたよ。何二人してばっくれかましてんだよ。
No reason. I almost missed school, you know?
エテ吉さん、その後のりこ先生はどうなりましたか？
Erekichi-san.
いやもう俺の女よ。この前優しいところ見せちゃったから、これからデートよ。
I wonder about that.
立てこもりの件に関してはユキ様を恨まねえよ。とりあえずビシッとしつけといたから。
頼りになりますね。
Eiji, you hear any strange rumors in the town lately?
噂？
Concerning Mao or anything?
聞かねえけど、昨日の夜はなんか大きなイベントがあったらしいな。
What do you mean?
いや、路上をよ。トラックが10台くらい走ってた。ホストの宣伝みたいだったけど。
10? You don't see that every day.
あとはオフィス街へのメインの道路で事故があったの知ってるか？
Are you talking about the maintenance work going on up there? The thing about the sewage pipes or something?
破裂したらしいぜ、水道管が。
So the road's closed off then?
噂じゃ、なんかラリったチンピラの仕業らしいぜ。作業員にいきなり襲いかかったらしいよ。
That's going a bit too far for a prank, even if the kid was high. Alright, thanks. Later.
デート頑張ってください。
おう。お前らもなんか知らねえけど、やばいことに首突っ込むなよ。
Yeah. He saw us off with an uncharacteristically serious expression. Later, Eiji.
山王物産まで行ってどうします？
Scouting. We'll pretend to be clients and snoop around. If we're lucky, we might even get a glimpse of Mao, or Hashimoto, or that foreigner. I met the director of senior management, a guy named Somiya, when Sano was developing the Eastern District. I'm not saying that gives me a right to barge in and make an emergency appointment with him, but it's a passable excuse for being in the building. The front entrance to the Sano Corporation headquarters. Despite the weekend, this building is in full swing. 2 black luxury sedans were stopped in front of the doors.
浅井さん、あの人って。
A politician steps out of the vehicle, surrounded by bodyguards in black suits. It's a man named Imagawa Tsuneo. He's a party leader in the government and is on the news fairly often. He has quite the influence in the federal government. He serves the Prime Minister devoutly, acting as the spokesman for most of his policies, and there are rumors that he'll run for the party presidency next term.
魔王は政治家にもつながりがあるんでしょうか？
If that's the case, he's probably not an enemy that we can tackle on our own.
はるちゃん？はるちゃんじゃないか？
A voice suddenly calls out behind us.
あ、ゆうやさんじゃないですか。どうも。
It was Iwai Yuya. He has a baby face, but a tight body reminiscent of a gymnast.
偶然だね。元気にしてるかい？親父も何かとはるちゃんのことを気にかけていてね。
He had a gentle smile, one so bright that it was almost blinding. Hey.
こんにちは。先日屋上でお会いしましたね。
He was the man who sparked the return of my oldest memories of Usami.
無事再会することができたんですね。
He seemed to be really happy about it. Yeah.
いやー、よかった。幼い頃の二人はまるで恋人同士でしたからね。
すいませんね。自分はあなたのことシカトしてたみたいで。
はるちゃんは変わってたからね。なかなか声もかけられなかったよ。
This man's atmosphere was somewhat similar to Tsubaki's, actually. He had the smell of someone who grew up in a happy family and led a happy life.
そうだ、食事は済ませたかい？
いえ、
今ランチタイムでね。よかったら3人でどうです？
I accepted Iwai's offer. Yeah, sure. We could eat lunch on the rooftop, like old times. Now I have an excuse for being in the Sano Corporation building. Unaware of my ulterior motives, Iwai smiled.
いいですね。3階にうまい弁当屋があるんです。
企業のビルなのにそんなのあるんですか？
レストランもあるし、郵便局の出張所もあるし、スーツの仕立てをしてくれる店もあるよ。
These large corporations really are something else.
それじゃ行きましょうか。
He held out his hand to us like a gentleman. They say that you can tell the type of life a person has led by looking at his hands. I'm not that perceptive, but even I noticed Iwai's rough hand contrasting his noble, gentle, superficial appearance.
ああ、学生の頃日雇いのバイトをしていましてね。
He defends himself shyly. He must have noticed my staring. His father may be a Sano executive, but he doesn't have the air of a spoiled child with no concept of hardship. And why Yuya is the kind of guy I can't look straight in the eyes. A handful of men swaggered into the Sano Corporation boardroom. Though Alan may be retired from the mercenary business, he still walks with complete silence. The other 3 mercenaries posing as visiting businessmen were glancing at their surroundings. There's nothing strange about a few suits carrying briefcases through a general trading company. They had carefully studied the map of this building beforehand. They could make it to their destination with closed eyes. That destination was Director Somiya's office on the 49th floor. As we suspected, he was busy with another visitor. Beside the locked door was a card reader, its red light shining to ward off any intruders. Ignoring the presumptuous LED, I slid a forged card through the slot and opened the door.
失礼いたします。
I courteously apologize as we walk into the wide room. Director Somiya and the politician Imagawa were sitting down in leather sofas. Imagawa's secretary and 3 Sano officials were also present. Last but not least, 2 Secret Servicemen stood behind Imagawa. Bulges the size of pistols stood out from under their suit jackets. One of the officers, a greasy middle-aged man, was in a panic.
ご無沙汰ですね、ソミヤ室長。その後いかがです？
All the men in the room shifted their gaze onto Somiya. They're interrogating him with their glares, asking, "You know these intruders?"
日中に会うのは初めてだな。いや、こうしてみる。やはり若い。
He spoke with resignation.
何の用かな、魔王。
さすがに肝が据わっていますね。この場で私の存在を隠そうとしないのは好感が持てます。
君は大切なビジネスパートナーだ。皆さんにご紹介しよう。彼こそが我が山王物産を陰で支えてくれた男だ。
どうもはじめまして。そちらは今川先生ですね。
Imagawa's face contorted a bit in response. I'd obviously known about Imagawa's meeting with Somiya beforehand.
実はソミヤ室長、今日は長年お使いしてきた分の報酬をいただきに伺いました。
そうかね。
He nodded, like he was prepared for this.
染谷さん、一体何が始まるのです？
The second Imagawa turned to face Somiya. Oh man. The sound of gunshots rang out, and the 2 Secret Servicemen fell to the floor. 1 bullet to the head each. It served as a splendid performance. After a brief moment of shock, the screams of executives filled the air.
お静かに。あなた方は殺しません。
The only ones not screaming were Somiya and Imagawa.
一体何が目的だ？
He has no problem finding words, even in this situation. top-knot politicians are made of different stuff.
いい執務室ですな、室長。
I look around the room.
トイレもバスルームも完備ですか。そちらの冷蔵庫はビールでも冷やしてあるのですか。
ああ、おつまみもある。1日や2日籠城するにはもってこいの部屋だよ。
助かります。では全員私がいいと言うまで両手を頭の上に置いてください。
Somiya encouraged everyone to follow my orders.
指示に従ってください。彼は本気だ。
随分と素直ですな。
いつかこんな日が来ると思っていたよ。なぜなら君は魔王だからね。
机の下にある非常用ボタンを押さないのですね。
Somiya feebly smiled.
警察の SP ですら瞬時に殺した君たちに警備会社の人間が太刀打ちできるとは思わんよ。今川先生もバカな考えはおやめください。
Imagawa had his arm to his chest, looking for a chance to get something from his pocket. He was most likely trying to get in contact with his bodyguards waiting outside. I was satisfied with the results. Now, there are 3 places in this building we need to secure it right away. The first is the 49th floor, including Somiya's office. We're currently there, and it's been secured satisfactorily. We've succeeded in capturing the hostages. Next is the 47th floor's computer room, which controls the entire building. A single supercomputer housed there regulates the skyscraper's ventilation, heating, electricity, and telephone system. If we can commandeer it, we can control all the passages in the building, be they fire doors, emergency shutters, or the main gate. Lastly, we need to keep our eyes on the rooftop. This is the most likely insertion point for any police operation against us. We need to have someone guarding the rooftop at all times.
はい、この場は頼んだぞ。
I patted Alan's shoulder and left the room. Alright, so, Mao's plan has begun, and they have no idea.
幼い頃から君たちとは友達になりたいと思っていたんだよ。
He happily reminisces as he prods his lunchbox with his chopsticks.
よくここで2人を見かけていたからね。
Was there some atmosphere around us that made us seem unapproachable?
君たちは恋人同士なんだろ？
どうなんですか、浅井さん。
I shook my head. No way.
ガーン。
That face.
あれ？そうなんだ。
Iwai smiled like Tsubaki again. Are you single? For some reason, I felt the need to know.
自分と結婚しろ的な話をゆうやさんのお父様からされましたか？
Iwai groaned.
親父のやつ、まだそんなことを。
Wait, really? Are Usami and Iwai that close?
いや、誤解しないでください。うちの父ははるちゃんのお父さんを慕ってましてね。はるちゃんを不憫に思ってるんです。
Well, it's not like I care. Okay, I did kind of care, but I couldn't help but get a little pissy.
気を悪くしたらすみません。僕ももう26ですから、親父もいい相手の一人くらいいないのかとうるさくて。
Usami, a good wife? He has quite strange tastes.
また尖る。
I stood up and walked over to the fence encircling the rooftop. I looked down upon the cityscape from the skyscraper's roof. This place really has grown. The city has annexed dozens of nearby towns as suburbs, simply to house its rapidly expanding economy and its workers. When I first met Usami, there wasn't even a central boulevard. I looked straight down. I'm not afraid of heights, but the sheer power of the sight sends shivers down my back. The window cleaning gondola hanging from the outer wall just emphasizes how far from the ground I am.
昔を懐かしんでいるんですか？
Just then, the rooftops steel door opened. A dark-skinned, chiseled-faced man stood behind it. The tall foreigner glared at the three of us. He's wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase, so I assume he's an employee taking a break.
すぐに降りろ。
He spoke rather fluent in Japanese. I couldn't tell if he looked to be in his 20s or 40s. Another similarly dressed foreigner followed him onto the rooftop. They both had stern looks in their eyes.
どうかしましたか？
The foreigner ignored a wise question and reached for his pocket. I felt a chill run down my spine.
降りるんだ。
With an intimidating tone of voice, he pointed a gun at us.
あなたたちは。
指示に従え。
The other man had also pulled a gun.
お前たちは人質だ。
It took me a while to comprehend his
こ
words.
の建物は1300時からすでに我々の制圧下にある。状況を理解したら指示に従え。
He finishes addressing us, then orders the other man in English.
浅井さん
Usami mutters next to me. Yeah. A takeover? Being faced with something like that so suddenly, it just doesn't seem real. But if it's Mao, then...
わかりました。
Iwai looks over to us with a taut face. All we could do was put our hands up and obey him. Alright, and actually that is where we are going to end today's episode. Things are heating up once again. So, as always, thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode of G Senjo no Mao.